This is God in the Grind.
God in the Grind podcast is in partnership with the Virginia Christian Chamber of Commerce and powered by Selah Productions. Visit us at covidchristianchamber.com or find us on social media at COVID Christian Chamber or Coastal Virginia Christian Chamber of Commerce. Hey, welcome. You found us. We're so glad you're here today. This is Roberta Angel.
And Joseph Perry.
And we are God in the Grind podcast. And we are so happy today that the Lord has introduced us to such an amazing leader. By his grace, he let us meet. His name is Steve Gandara. And Steve is a culture expert. And he is a speaker, an author, a consultant. He is a corporate culture transformation expert. He's a co-founder, managing director at Excellent Cultures, Inc., nearly 5 decades of building the world's best cultures for the world's best companies. And we're so excited to have you here, Steve Gandara.
Welcome, Steve.
Hi there.
Hey, thanks for coming today.
My pleasure.
So, Steve, you have so many decades of experience with leaders and culture. And we were just on a phone call this afternoon with one of our board members, and he was talking to us about the culture we created. And I said, stop right there. I said, the Lord has already gone ahead of you. Our podcast this afternoon, Ep.10, by the way, of God in the Grind podcast, is with Steve Gandara, and he is the cultures expert. So I just think it's so important. Some of the, all the work you've done with some of the companies. Joseph, why don't you ask Steve the first question today?
Sure. Well, so here we go. So culture seems to be a really important thing to any business, organization, or even to a family, church, team, or even a nation. But why is it so important, Steve?
Yeah.
Well, the reason is because what most people don't realize is that culture drives everything. It's the most misunderstood word in society. Everybody talks about it all the time, but nobody's ever looked up the definition, because why would you look up the definition of a word you already know the answer to? So, but the problem is it's a different answer. So if you Googled corporate culture, you're going to get 2 definitions, one from Harvard, one from Cambridge. You put them together, it's the beliefs that govern how people behave. And corporate doesn't just mean companies. It means you can have corporate worship in a church. It's a team, a group, a family. So corporate culture is the beliefs that govern how people behave individually and then collectively as a team, a family, a church, a company, an organization. Both. And the problem with beliefs is that most of them are subconscious. We don't know what we believe. We can talk about the research behind it later. But as a result, the reason it's so important is because it drives everything. Just think about it for a second. If you have a manager who believes my boss is a jerk, they're going to behave totally differently than a manager who believes I like and respect my boss. If you have a teenager who believes all my parents want to do is control my life, they're going to behave totally differently than the teenager who believes, well, my parents have my best interests at heart. Now, the problem with the guy who believes his boss is a jerk, he could have a great boss, but 2 bosses ago, he had a boss that was a jerk, and he's viewing everything through that lens and doesn't know it. And again, he doesn't even know that he has this belief that's governing him. I mean, it's what the Bible calls the heart, the inside belief system of deep inside belief system of human beings. And the teenager who believes that all her parents want to do is control her life could have just heard that from a friend on social media an hour ago, decided she was going to believe it. And now, parents are having all kinds of challenges. So it's critical. I mean, it drives everything. It drives nations, it drives teams, it drives individuals, it drives churches, it drives families. What people believe. That's why Jesus said be it done unto you according to your faith. It's about what you believe. And the problem is most beliefs, according to the research, are subconscious. We don't know what we believe. 95% of our beliefs are under the surface. We don't get it. We don't understand it, but they're there.
Well, I mean, if they're just there and they're so subconscious, then is there a way to be intentional about it? Actually, let me
Well,
back up
go
before we
ahead.
even intentionality.
Yeah.
How do you know you're building a healthy culture?
Mm.
Well, you don't. You don't. I mean, all you can really do, because keep in mind, if the research from the International Masterson Institute, Dr. Judith Pearson tells us that the human brain processes 11 million bits of information a second, but
Wow.
consciously we're only aware of 40, not 40 million, but 40. So you got 10 million and something bits that are going on in our brains subconsciously all the time. Past memories, past experiences, noise from the outside, what we heard on TV yesterday, social media, you name it. And then Dr. Bruce Lipton at Stanford tells us that most people don't even realize they have a subconscious mind when 95% of their life is being controlled by the subconscious. So, it's like trying to get your arms around Jello. So you really don't know what you believe. All you can do is you can look at behavior. You can
Mm.
look at how people are behaving. So, but again, your teenager could be misbehaving because she's afraid of something that might happen that has nothing to do with what's going on. Until you know what the belief is that's behind it, it's like trying to get your arms around Jello. Just by the grace of God, He's given us some really great tools and scientific instruments and biblically based processes, to be able to manage it. But for the novice, it's really hard to do. All you can
Steve,
do is look at the behavior.
Steve, why do you think culture is so difficult to address? I think you kind of brought up a couple of them.
Yeah.
And why it's more important to manage. It's most
Well,
importantly hard to
yeah,
manage.
yeah. Again, like we said earlier, it's tough to address because it's like trying to get your arms around Jello. You can't. You don't know what someone's believing. You just know
Yeah.
how they're acting. And
Mhm.
until you can get to what they're believing, and until they can get to what they're believing, and change it. The good thing about beliefs is they're not genetic. It's not like a personality profile that you're just born that way.
Mhm.
Beliefs are learned and they can be changed. And as a result, how do you manage something that you can't see?
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about it all the time, and you have organizations and companies and churches that have these beautiful God, Mom, and apple pie values. But just because you have God, Mom, and apple pie values doesn't mean that people believe them in their hearts and choose to
Right.
live according to them. Or even they may choose to live according to them, but then they've got old bad habits from the past that keep them from living according to them.
Yeah. So I think we're all walking around with something from our past. I always say that people are looking through the lenses, whether it's a hurt lens or whatever it is, they're always looking through that lens. And I've never heard culture so much until I became a Christian, right? So do you think that Christian businesses or secular businesses have in that culture is more important to them?
Well, it's important to all of them.
Yeah.
Especially to a Christian business, because I mean, if you believe that, if you believe the Bible, if you believe the Word of God, then if you're Christian, you should be excellent, because my Bible says that we're to work as unto the Lord, and that there are actually there are 4 biblical values that represent an excellent culture. That, oh, by the way, scientists who've been discovering or studying this for 50 years have identified. They just have different names for the biblical values, but we're to work as unto the Lord. That's called excellence. We're about fulfilling our God-given potential. That's called self-actualization. This in the scientist's words.
Mhm.
We're about loving our neighbor as ourself, or respecting fellow human beings. The scientists call that humanistic encouraging. And then we're about John 17 unity, the last prayer that Jesus prayed before he left the earth, which is that unity, that we may be one, what the
Mm.
scientists call affiliative. So again, if you're Christian, you ought to be excellent, and we're
Mhm.
called to be excellent. But unfortunately, what happens, because they don't teach us a different way to run our businesses in church, other than to be honest and to tell the truth and to have integrity, which are all great things, and we should.
Yep.
But so what happens is we see Christian business leaders all the time. I mean, our smallest client has 8 employees, and they're a private commercial real estate firm, and it happened to be a Christian business run by Christian leaders with mostly all Christians participating. Our largest is Toyota. We've served them for 35 years. We've done projects for Microsoft, for Costco, for Subway sandwiches, for Caterpillar, lots of huge companies. But it doesn't make any difference whether you're Christian or not. Human beings still are hardwired with those values, those belief systems inside. And when you ask them to respond to, what's the culture you want to work in, what's the culture you want to live in, all across the world, they're the same thing. But the challenge is not, what do you want? It's what do you actually have, and how do you get from where you are to where you want to go is where the challenge is. And again, it's not just company wide. It's not just team. It's individuals. We have personal cultures. We have leadership cultures. We have family cultures. We all have beliefs that govern how we behave. And when we get together in a team or a cult or a church or an organization or a business, that's where it starts to unfold collectively, not just individually.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that earlier as you were talking, and the thought of everyone coming from these different cultures, having all these different values, and then coming together in the kind of culture that makes, and then for you to be, the person at the top that is in charge of shaping a particular culture for your company, your organization, just how complicated that sounds like it must be to say, okay, guys, you're all used to this, but here's how we do things here. I mean, how do we even do that?
Yeah. I mean, Steve, is it really possible? I'm sure you're going to tell me yes, but is it really possible to create culture intentionally? So this is just what we've heard. We've been around for 17 months leading these business owners, and they say to us they love the authentic culture that we've created, that we really love them. And a woman said to me the other day in one of the meetings, she said, you're the leader. Like, I'm here, Roberta, because of the leader that you are, because the businesswoman you are, because she's a Black woman. She said, because of the Black woman you are, the Black girl you are, because of the white girl you are, because pastor you are. And I'm like, really? I didn't even realize I was creating this culture. But I'm just there to love on people, and it's authentic. But if I have someone to help me with this,
well, it's a lot easier to do it individually than it is collectively. And the greatest enemies of an excellent culture are fast growth and more people. We have clients that are really good leaders and faith-based leaders, and live their faith. And once they get past 20 people, it gets really, really tough. And the more people you add, the tougher it gets. And it makes no difference whether you're a faith-based company or a Christian company or a secular company, the same biblical values, because God's word does not return to him void. And it's part of the way the kingdom was designed, the way he created the earth. We've had secular companies that have created excellent cultures that just outrun and outperform Christian companies who haven't been figured out how to be able to do it. And generally speaking, I mean, our model is because it's so difficult to know what's inside of someone's belief system or in your heart, so to speak. There's a suite of scientific instruments that we use that measure those behavioral tendencies. And then from there, once you know what the behavior is, you can start to ask the right questions to get to the belief. And the good news about it, I mean, we learned Romans 12:1 in church to give our body as a living sacrifice, but they don't teach us how to do Romans 12:2, how to be transformed by the renewing of our mind to the good and acceptable and the perfect will of God, onto Romans 12:3. So it's about identifying what it is that's holding us back, and then transforming it by renewing our minds to a different belief. And again, keep in mind these beliefs that drive behavior. Corporate values are like New Year's resolutions. They don't work. They're nice, they're beautiful, they're gorgeous. You can have God, mom, and apple pie values, but that doesn't mean that the people have them in their hearts. I mean, if you remember the Enron story from years ago. In fact, if you don't, just listen to the CEO of Cracker Barrel, who talked about the Enron story when they tried to change their culture. to be able to get rid of all of the good old stuff, and their market rebelled, and everybody wanted the good old stuff back again. And she said, well, when we started seeing our stock go like Enron's, that we realized that this wasn't going to work. Enron was a global oil and gas company who went bankrupt, who tens of thousands, thousands of jobs were lost, billions in shareholder value. The executives went to jail. Their accounting firm, Arthur Anderson and Company, used to be one of the big three, went out of business because of the Enron scandal. One of their paramount corporate values was integrity. Well, how well did that work? It didn't. One of my friends, Dr. Al Arisman, interviewed the whistleblower at Enron, and she told him that Enron went down because of an unwritten corporate value that wasn't on the list, but everybody lived it. And it was positivity. And so how can a beautiful thing like positivity take a global company down? Well, because anytime somebody came into the boss's office with bad news, they were shouted down for being positive. Why, or for being negative? Why, we're a positive culture. We don't want to hear that negative. So pretty soon, people stop talking about the bad news, and the rest is history. I mean, if you hide from bad news, it isn't going to change. And we've seen some big ministries that have gone down for that same reason. If you don't talk about the bad news, if you don't address it, if you don't repent, pretty soon, the grace of God runs out, whether you're a secular business or a church or a family or an individual. And so it's very much a science and an art, but it's difficult to manage because it's subconscious. It's below the surface.
Yeah, I used to say all the time back when I was pastoring that truth works, lies don't, but truth works. And it seems like values, there are some values that are in line with the truth, and they work, and they get you the good results that you're looking for. And it seems like there's others that don't. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so when you look, what the behavioral scientists will tell you, and it's also very biblical, that it's not, truth does work, but people don't behave based upon the truth. They behave based upon the truth that they perceive that could be believing a lie. And we all act in accordance with the truth as we perceive it to be. So, for example, one of our partners, Dr. Terry S. Smith, is a ordained minister. He's a pastor, licensed practicing therapist. When he was getting his doctorate degree at Boston University 53 years ago, he discovered a tool that was created by an atheist psychiatrist. And if you use it the way it was designed, it'll send you to depression. But the Lord showed him how to flip it, and it does just the opposite. And so he's ministered to tens of thousands of people all over the world, women who are sex trafficked in India, CEOs, PTSD survivors, teenagers, you name it, the whole cross section of humanity. And what he's discovered in 53 years of practical experience and research is that every child, every human being between birth and 12 years old goes through some kind of emotional trauma. Sometimes they were abused. Sometimes they had a great life, but they were bullied in the second grade. And at the moment of that emotional trauma, when the child is hurting, because children are the best recorders and the worst interpreters, the devil sneaks in and says, Angel, it's because you're not good enough. Joe, you're not smart enough. Angel, you're the wrong color. Joe, you're the wrong sex. All these lies. I mean, tens of thousands of people all over the world, and these lies fit in one paragraph. And because it's subconscious, now you have a 50-year-old CEO who's under stress at work, or an entrepreneur who's being governed by an emotionally damaged 12-year-old and doesn't know it. And these are not spiritual, it's mental. And, it's what the Bible calls strongholds. So these mental beliefs that are lies that people adopted as children, that come from the dark side, govern their lives, and they don't know they're governing them. And then until you can go through the process and discover, what is this lie that I've been believing my whole life that I didn't know I was believing, that's driving how I act, how I think, how I behave, what stresses me out, what gives me anxiety, all these things, and turn it around to what you said, Joe, to the truth, and the truth is what God tells us who we are in his word. But if you don't know that it's happening because it's subconscious and below the surface, we're stuck. I've been stuck. I mean, I bet everybody on this podcast is listening. You're either stuck right now or you've been stuck. one or the other. If it's the been stuck, then thank God you got unstuck. But it's culture is very, very powerful, and it's very powerful, very misunderstood.
Yeah, it seemed, and it sounds like the lies that you're talking about, they seem to all have to do with our identity.
Yeah, in most cases, Dr. Smith calls it your core lie or your core truth, which
Mm.
has to do with your identity. But again, but it's not just that lie. I mean, once the devil gets you on the hook, he'll start reeling you in, and you start believing lies about, well, you know how she is, and you know how he is, and and it all started because you got married and realized that one person squeezes the toothpaste in the middle of the tube and the other doesn't. And then if you pay attention to the forces of darkness, pretty soon you just married Dracula, and you didn't know it. You didn't know it. And again, anybody who's ever been married, knows how that works. So it's about, what are the lies that we unconsciously, the psychiatrists and psychologists call it sanction. Sanction. And children, when they're in pain, are the best recorders and the worst interpreters. So they'll sanction these lies.
Mhm.
The Bible calls it acknowledge. Philemon 1:6. Our faith is communicated based upon the truth of who we are in Christ that we acknowledge. If you don't acknowledge it, if you don't agree with it, it's just going to drift.
Wow.
So
go
I
ahead.
have one question. So you hang in some really amazing crowds, and you have a lot of wonderful clients and friends. I'd love to hear, and this isn't a question that I thought of earlier, but I wanted to hear a story of a company that you worked with that thought their culture came in one way, and you helped them identify their culture and what the outcome was.
Yeah, let's see. There's so many. So let's see. What would be a good one to talk about that we can share? We can share with the public. We can
Well,
share with the
you don't
public
have
in a
to say
meaningful
the
way.
name. You
Yeah.
don't have
So
to.
how about this? How about this?
Yeah.
And you're going to have Dave on your show pretty soon. One of our clients and good friends, Dave Jaworski, senior executive with Microsoft. We met each other, many years ago. We served on a ministry board together, and he was the 8th Canadian that Microsoft hired, that Bill Gates hired, and he's brilliant. He can write code faster than you can think. He's a great leader, great salesperson. He was Western Regional Manager, National Sales Manager.
Wow.
One day, Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and Frank Gaudette, who was their CFO, called him into the office and said, "We want you to take over this struggling division. The president's leaving to run for public office in Seattle. Would you take this over and take a couple of years and turn it around?" And he says, "Okay." And then on the way out the door, he says that Steve Ballmer yelled at him in typical Steve Ballmer fashion and said, "And don't let it take you 2 years." So, and the division is 5% behind plan. We want you to turn around. Well, he goes and does an audit. His predecessor, who was leaving to run for public office, apparently had the numbers wrong. They weren't 5% behind plan. They were 70% in the red. They were bleeding cash, and nobody knew it. And again, he's a faith-based guy. So, and this is in Redmond, Washington, in Seattle. And all of a sudden, the workforce that his predecessor left there, all the management team, saw the Bible on his desk and decided that he was the devil. And they didn't blackball him. They targeted him. They went after him. So he's got class warfare, because he's got a Bible on his desk and his faith is there, and then the people that are there anyway. He we knew each other, and he asked us to work, and he's a great leader. And we went to work, transformed the culture, lost no people. And they went from 70% in the red to the highest performing division in Microsoft for 8 months in a row. And and many of the people who were there, had lifestyle changes because their culture changed and because of how he led them, with love and without judgment. Lost no people and went from underperforming. And you can look on our website and hear his story. But it's about those beliefs that are driving and governing people. And in the process, and again, we've got, if you look at our website, just on the client stories page, there's like dozens of stories like that. that, identify, what's really going on in the culture. And when you go after it, and the good news about human beings, I don't care if they're believers or not. In fact, one of the scientists that we work with, her firm has been gathering data on corporate cultures. Her founder, started gathering data on corporate cultures more than 50 years ago at the University of Michigan.
Oh.
And so we have access to data in every civilized companies and organizations in every civilized nation on the planet. And when you ask the question of anybody in the world, any place in the world, got data to prove this, what's the ideal culture that you want to work in? Or what's heaven at work look like to you? Guess what? Those 4 biblical values are the same every place in the world. If I could work where I wanted to, I would have a culture of excellence. It's called achievement, people setting and achieving goals. I'd have a culture of fulfilling my God-given potential, self-actualization, being all that I can be. I'd have a culture of love your neighbor as yourself, humanistic encouraging, where people, my teammates, would respect me and value me. And I've had a culture of what the scientists call affiliative unity, would be all of us together working, for a common purpose, and not the NFL team in the preseason where everybody's stabbing each other in the back to, get the coach's attention, compared to the NFL team that won the Super Bowl, who's all of us together competing against the other guys. And again, these are all, trends that are driven, these cultures are driven by subconscious beliefs that people hold individually and collectively. And, and then there's all these lies. I mean, that you get sold by the media and everybody else. If you have a successful business, you have an excellent culture. No, you don't. Less than 10% of successful. I mean, businesses that are making profits and are successful have less than 10% have excellent cultures. What does that mean? That it means that, gosh, if you're making money and you're really successful, and you don't have an excellent culture, how much better could you do if you had an excellent culture? Or if you have God, mom, and apple pie values, you have an excellent culture. Well, no, you don't. You might or you might not. Or we're a Christian company. We have Christian values. Well, that's great. But what are the values in your heart that people are living? And everybody lies to the boss. Everybody.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a believer or non-believer. You lie to your boss. How do I know? Well, because you tell your spouse different things about your boss than you tell your boss about your boss. Everybody lies to the boss. And I don't, that way, if you don't have data of anonymous feedback and not engagement surveys or not the normal things, if you can't find out what's going on in people's souls, it's real easy to get stuck and not stuck. And maybe you're not stuck. Maybe our best clients have awesome cultures. They just want amazing. They already have really good cultures and they want to go from good to great. I mean, they're overachievers who are hungry for more. Not somebody that's in trouble that's about to go out of business, because those guys are so busy doing what they're doing and so sold on doing what they're doing that they're not interested in learning anything about improving.
Wow. So that's incredible. It's incredible that it's the same across all these cultures.
Yeah.
Same values that people are desiring. When you're building these cultures, what are some of the pitfalls that especially Christians tend to get into, and how would they get out of them?
Well, there are so many pitfalls, and usually, well, let's just take your show, for example. The name of your show, it's about the grind. And again, because they don't teach us in church, at least I haven't found a church that teaches how you're supposed to run a business. What Christians in business do is we automatically run our business the same way the world does, because that's just the way you run a business. And what you end up with is people, overdosing on work, and destroying their families, destroying their marriages, and they only read one verse in the Bible, and that's about the Christian work ethic, and work is unto the Lord. And they didn't read the one that says, if or they read the one that said, you provide for your family or your infidel dog. But again, so it's so easy to get sucked in. And again, I've been there. I mean, I've been there. it's so easy to get sucked in to doing the same things the way the world does, instead of, seeking the Lord because, for a better way, because there really is a better way. And in many cases, you just hang in there long enough and get enough battle scars, you start to figure out a better way. But
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day that went through 3 marriages, and was actually, praying for the Lord to kill him, praying for the Lord to kill him. And by the grace of God, of course, God did, God's not a killer, so he didn't kill people. This is CEO of a company, Christian CEO of a company. He gave him a purpose and helped him turn his whole life around. But he's still dealing with challenges in the company culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really easy to get sucked in, and again, this happens subconsciously. So let me give you an example. Um, my wife, is a voracious sports fan. I think we're about to be married for 54 years, and she was my girlfriend for 4 years before that. We got married when
Wow.
we were babies. So she's a voracious sports fan, and she loves every kind of competitive game, and she likes to watch the games in real time. Well, that's fine with me, except I don't want to listen to those commercials that tell me that if I don't take this pill,
Right.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Or if I don't take this shot, so I'm going to be fat. And if I don't take the pill that's now replacing the shot, that I'm going to be fat. Because that's simply not true. And then if you're really not careful, then they tell you, well, if you do take the pill, you're going to lose your hearing, your eyebrows are going to fall out, your stomach's going to, and then you hear all these lies, and they're going into your subconscious mind. Okay.
Somehow.
Your mind is hearing them, and they're recording, and you listen to this stuff, even though it's unconscious listening, it just soaks in. And then pretty soon, the next week you have a bad burrito that you picked up at the taco shack, and you have a tummy ache, and the devil says it's stomach cancer. Don't you remember? You took the fat shot, or you took the fat pill, and one of the side effects was stomach cancer. You've got it. If you believe that, you're in trouble.
I know.
If you believe that, and again, it's like, it's out there in our society, it's out there in our culture, it's there all the time.
Yeah, because it seems like on a daily basis, we're either always partnering with truth or lies.
That's right. Yeah.
We just
Joseph
come into
shuts me
agreement real
down, though.
fast.
He will not let me start saying the enemy is attacking this. We're in warfare, even if we are in warfare, right? Because all the things we're trying to do, Steve, he will not accept that.
It's just really important for me that we never give the devil the spotlight, because that's what he craves. I heard a pastor say one time that he doesn't mind being rebuked and cast out and bound all the time, as long as he's the center of attention.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I'm with Pastor Joe there on that one. I'm with Pastor Joe on that one. I was having a debate with a colleague earlier this week about the Leviathan spirit. It's like, wait a minute. My Bible says that I tread on serpents and scorpions over all the power of the enemy.
Where does it say Leviathan in the Bible? Show me.
I don't know.
Well, we're just so excited that, we didn't get to ask you all the questions today. I think we should probably have a part 2 to this conversation. I want to talk about your book, and I want to talk about resources for people that are listening right now. How do they get more information about you? Is there something that you wanted to direct them to?
Yeah, so you can find us online at excellentcultures.com. The newest book, the book that's out now that you can get on Amazon, is called Transform Then Thrive, and it's an instructional leadership novel that follows a fictional tech company in Dallas Fort Worth that uses our proven process to transform from surviving to thriving. But even though it's fiction, the stories that are in there, 95% of them are real experiences we've had with real clients, and it'll give you, a process for an organization or a company that is very well done. The new book that is at the publishers now, it'll come out in May. Game Changer Publishing, it'll be out in May. Is called The Culture Ripple, and it addresses a lot of the things that we're talking about today. But I mean, the real key is if you've got a team or an organization or a church, you need to know what your culture looks like. And so, I mean, and we fully support the Christian Chamber. You guys are the good guys. You're out there making a difference for the kingdom. So anybody who's listening, and then Angel, I'm sure you can put this in the footnotes. If you just go to excellentcultures.com/MRI, just like a medical MRI, excellentcultures.com/MRI, there is a 10-minute culture assessment that you can take on your organization, your team, your company. It's going to ask you 10 questions. Remember, culture is the beliefs that govern how we behave. In our 47 years, we figured out that there are 10 key core beliefs that determine whether you have an excellent culture or not. Like, what do your people believe about accountability? Well, is it, well, let's all raise our hands, I'll be accountable for that? Or is it everybody hiding under the desk because they don't want to be accountable?
Yeah.
Or something in between? What do they believe about competition? Is it all of us, we're the NFL team in the postseason, all of us together against those guys? Or are we the NFL team in the preseason where we're stabbing each other in the back to get the coach's attention? What do we believe about our ability to do our jobs? It's we're overworked and underpaid, or we just need to learn more to do more, something in between. So, I mean, you can go to that excellentcultures.com/MRI for you guys. It's free. And it's going to ask you 10 questions. And again, it's going to ask you to answer them twice. Once for the culture you desire, what's your vision? What do you want? And once for the culture that's actual. It's a multiple choice, so the answers won't be exact, but you want to pick the one that's closest to what you have. And then the algorithm will produce a report that will benchmark your vision as well as your current culture. It'll benchmark your vision against our database of the best cultures in the world. After 20 some odd years of gathering this data, and tell you if you have the right vision, and then it'll benchmark your data against your current culture. And if you'll put when you put your name in, it'll ask you for your name and your email address so we can send you the report. Just put a paren, Christian Chamber, behind there, and then we'll make it available to you to use for your leadership team, on the house. No extra cost.
Awesome.
But you've got to put. So what should they put after their name, Angel? What should they put in there?
Christian
just Christian Chamber. Okay, put Christian Chamber
parentheses or something.
Yeah, in a paren or something after that, and then we'll not only process the report for you on us for the good of the kingdom, and then have one of our team members go over what it means on us for the good of the kingdom, but we'll also make it available for you to do with your leadership team. And you can, we'll create an anonymous link where you can send it out to them and ask them to fill it out anonymously. What's the culture that you think we should have here at XYZ Incorporated and live every day? And what do you think the culture is we have? And if it's anonymous, then you're going to get the truth. And then from there, you'll be able to see, really what requires work. Where do we need to work? Where do we need to improve?
So is it just the owners, or would it be the employees?
Well, I would start out, if you're a leader or an owner, do it yourself first, and then make sure you put Christian Chamber in there, where you put your name. And then we'll, once we process the report for you, if you're with the Christian Chamber or even listening to the podcast and you put Christian Chamber in, we will make it available for you to do with your leadership team. We can't do the whole organization, on the house, but we'll do the leadership team for you, and you can see what's going on with your leadership team, just as our contribution to the kingdom. I mean, if you're Christian, you ought to have an excellent culture. I mean, there's no reason you shouldn't. If you're Christian, you ought to have an excellent culture. And what you don't want to do is believe a lie that you have an excellent culture when you don't. And maybe you're making a lot of money, but people are dying in the meantime and destroying their families and their marriages. And that's not the way God created us to be. He created us to be ahead of the world and not behind. And having an excellent culture is a great way that you can get ahead of the world.
Amen. That's awesome.
Yeah, this was really good. Thank you so much. Well, I'm excited about the Culture Ripple coming out in May. let us know more about that and how we can help and get that out to our people as well. And the survey and all the work that you're doing, Steve, you're just such a blessing to us. Just gold. You are kingdom gold, and we're just honored.
If you're a Christian and you work in a culture, it ought to be excellent. Why not?
Amen.
Why not?
So in our last thing I'll say, in our presidential advisory council that I was telling you about, Steve, our first meeting right after January 1st, I asked them all, what did you hear from the Lord for your business this year? What is the one word? And I prayed. I was intentional about praying, and I heard the word excel.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph, and you told me it was what?
Yeah, excel, where we get the word excellent from, and that the etymology of the word speaks of like a mountain peak that juts out higher than all the others.
Wow.
And King David had an excellent spirit on him. That's what made him stand out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those my words for the year from the Lord. So I really want to get better in that. So excellent cultures today with Steve Gandara. Thank you so much for being here. This is God in the Grind podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Steve, with Roberta, Angel,
and Joseph.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. God in the Grind podcast is in partnership with the Virginia Christian Chamber of Commerce and powered by Selah Productions. Visit us at covachristianchamber.com or find us on social media at Covach Christian Chamber or Coastal Virginia Christian Chamber of Commerce.